Good morning. Today's a bits and bobs day in the garden. I'm going to get lots of little jobs that need doing done. I've had my eye on this silver birch. It sent out a long sucker that I want to use as a branch. So this definitely needs some work doing on it. The tree sent this long sucker out right out of the top. It's just above where I made a large chop this winter. So I need to put some movement into this to fill this space. It's really challenging filming this because obviously the trees are in full leaf, but I really do need to get some movement into this before it thickens up. There's another shoot a bit down here, I don't know if you can see it on that shot. I'm going to use this lower shoot to wrap the wire around so I can put a little bit of movement into that one as well. Bring the wire up around to the base of this main shoot, which is the one that I really am most interested in working on, and just bring the wire around. There we go. I probably wouldn't have wired this lower shoot on its own. It's still a little thin yet. But there we go, that's both of them wired. So I have to decide which way I want this movement. And I want it to kind of fill this space. So I'm going to move it towards the camera and then up. Just adding some interest to that, to the general shape of it. Excellent. I've managed to find an angle where you can see this lower branch, and again I want to move this away just with a slight bend there, and then a bit of upward movement. Lovely. If you saw the video where I worked on this windswept hawthorn, you'll remember I mentioned this branch which I thought would be okay. I snapped it during the wiring process, but it's died and it needs to come off. It's quite a major branch. It's a shame, but it's got to go. Yeah, it had almost completely ripped. Seeing as this branch has now been removed down here, I can use this as an opportunity to perhaps clean up this area and just eat into some of this trunk with my concave cutters. I'm hoping that over time this will kind of become a nice clean sort of taper to the top of the tree, because just because you're doing a windswept doesn't mean that you don't want that taper developing. You know, I do want a nice progression from this trunk into probably these two branches here, and obviously as these thicken over time it'll then create that illusion of, oh, that's a good cut, that was a good one. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. Sometimes in bonsai things happen that at the time you think are bad, and you go, oh no, that branch has snapped off. But who knows, in hindsight, that might end up being the best thing that's ever happened to this tree. because it's allowed me to, well, it's forced me into doing some changes, and I might look back and go, oh, I'm so glad that happened. And a bit of Zen philosophy for you there. Never goes amiss in the modern world. If you watched my video yesterday on making the acacia style tree out of that Cryptomeria japonica, I mentioned that I have 3 of them, and I've got a lot of quite small conifers over in this area. They've all been wired up and they're waiting to have work done on them, and this is another of the Cryptomerias which I think has got some nice potential. I'm not doing any work on this tree today, but I applied loads of wire in the winter to get some movement in this trunk. I cut a few branches off, and I'm looking forward to working on that later down the line. You'll have to excuse my shaky camera work. I've never had the steadiest of hands, but I wanted to show you some of my trees. These are all sort of garden centre, nursery stock material that I've been working on over the past 12 months. I did a lot of work on this in the winter. So I've got some nice junipers. They're only small, but I've wired them and tried to put some shapes into the trunks. I've got a little hinoki cypress over there, which has got a bit of potential. And I'm looking forward to working on these trees. As you know, I love putting these videos out, but there's a real helpful side to it for me. I've got access to loads of people who've got lots of bonsai experience, and I've got a tree here, and honestly I don't even know what it is. I collected it from some local scrubland at the back of a park. It's kind of where some people go and walk the dogs, and there's masses of this growing. It's just growing everywhere, and I dug up a small chunk of it. It's grown really healthily. I don't know if it's some kind of like wild privet or something like that. I'll zoom in a second and you can take a look. I want to know what you think I should do with it. I've got no idea, and I'm going to do what most people suggest in the comments. I'll sort of go through the options now. It's got lots of fairly straight branches. I could put some movement into these thinner ones with wire. So option 1 is I'll leave this thick branch trunk. There's nothing I can do with that, and I can apply heavy gauge wire and manipulate these branches downwards, and it'll just become like a multi-trunk. So that's option 1. Option 2 is that I remove the majority of these trunks. In fact, I remove all of them except this one main trunk here, which will be probably cut down to around here. So I remove all of these and just let this go into a single trunk bonsai. The other option is to have it as a slant style tree, to remove all of the main thick trunks. All the 4 big trunks can go, and I completely grow it from new using these shorter whips, and almost have it as a kind of clump style. I've given you 3 options there. Just leave a comment. All it has to be is option 1, option 2 or option 3. And when it comes to me styling this tree next week, whichever has the most votes, that's what I'm going to do with this tree. So it's just a bit of fun really. I hope you've enjoyed just a short video seeing me do a couple of odd jobs around the garden, and I'll see you soon.